It is the new time, 6 p.m. We'll call this April 16th, City of Santa Barbara Airport Commission to order. Roll call, please.
Bruce Miller,
Here.
Kirk Martin, Craig Arcuri,
Here.
Patricia Griffin,
Here.
Carl Hopkins,
Here.
Karen Kahn,
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here. Thank you. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Public comment. This is the portion for any member of the public comment. Do we have any speaker slips?
No
Public
speaker
comment?
slips.
All right. Moving on, notices that on Thursday, April 10th at 5 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board, Airport Administration, and Monday, April 14th, in the Airport Administration Building, the General Aviation Subcommittee did meet. And minutes. We have a recommendation to waive the reading and approve the minutes of the Wednesday, March 19th, 2014 meeting. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Minutes, March 14th approved. Consent calendar, we have 2 lease agreements and a property management report. Any changes to the consent calendar?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Motion to approve consent.
Recommend we approve.
Second.
All in favor of approving consent as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar is approved as presented. Thank you. Liaison reports. I believe we have our City of Goleta liaison. Mayor Bennett,
Nothing
anything to
to
say?
report.
Question to ask, man. Nothing
Already grilled you about your creek project. So. Okay, thank you. Thanks
you.
for joining us. We have I'm sure, a very interesting presentation coming up next, the FAA Tower presentation.
Yes, Commission. It's been several years since we've had the tower make a presentation on their activity here at the airport and what they actually cover. So we invited Todd Smith, the tower chief, to address Airport Commission tonight with a presentation on their activities. Todd?
Thank you, Hazel. Good evening, Airport Commission and airport staff. Mabel, if you could, we're waiting for the PowerPoint to spool up. Very good. Decided this evening that we would go back down into the roots to ensure that, kind of review for some of you all, but a history on the facility that provides air traffic service for your airport. So we're going to talk about, we can go back to the first one because I'm going to need some of that. Thank you, Mabel. Give you a kind of an overview of the lovely facility that we have that services our community. Santa Barbara is a tower TRACON. For those of you that are not illuminated, it's kind of rare these days. We have the control tower, which evidenced by the picture there, and that's kind of what people see when they think of air traffic control, the tower with the windows and us looking out over the airport environment. But we have the advantage of having a TRACON. That's a government acronym for Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility. There's not many of them left in the country, quite honestly. On the western half of the United States, well, at least in our region, you'll find one in Santa Barbara, Bakersfield, and Fresno. So it's real rare. There's a significant advantage to being an up-down facility. The advantage being that we have the radar room that services the airport or the tower co-located with the tower itself, which is actually an operational advantage because the tower controllers, they'll work upstairs for a couple of hours, work downstairs, so they can go back and forth, and they actually function more effectively as a team because they know what it's like to be on the tower end of the approach control service and what the ramifications are when you provide the radar. So, and certainly offer that to any of the Airport Commission. If you haven't seen the building in a while, probably a good idea to come over and look. It's very dynamic. The last most interesting thing that we implemented was Fusion, which is another form of automation that allows us to take all of the radar data as well as ADS-B, which is kind of GPS data, and fuse it into one target. much more efficient. It helps us reduce separation, and we get updates every second. It's real interesting to see. Further down the road, we are a level 7 facility. Little background on that. All air traffic facilities are rated or ranked according to what's called their conformity indexed, which is it's kind of a conglomeration of not just the amount of operations that you have, but the complexity of your facility. Things like mountainous terrain is factored in and considered. Intersecting runways is another consideration. And of course, the number of operations that you run. I can say that we were downgraded 2 years ago from an 8 to a 7. And most of that was a result of we've seen kind of a dropping off of general aviation. And also one thing that's interesting is the air carriers and air taxis, as you've probably noticed, I'm sure a lot of you travel commercially, they become far more efficient. So it's rare. Remember in the old days, you used to get on an airplane and say, I'll just pick out one of the empty seats. No, if you don't book 2 months in advance, you're probably sitting in the center, probably somewhere in the back. So they're very efficient at making sure that all of the flights that come in and out are full. So we watch, what's interesting is the ramifications across the country is that the numbers are down because the airlines are being more efficient with their flights. Also, general aviation seems to have dropped off a little bit. It's an expensive hobby, and there's a lot of people that are passionate about it, but sometimes it's difficult to maintain and operate an airplane, so we've seen those numbers diminish somewhat. Interestingly enough, recently I've been watching our numbers, and they tend to creep up. So traffic's coming back, which is actually the prediction or the forecast for our facility. Real quickly, we're located in the Sierra Pacific District, which basically means that we have oversight located in the San Francisco Bay Area at Oakland, and that's pretty much who we report to for support and guidance as we do our air traffic functions. Next one, please, Mabel. Again, I'm going to get down to some basics for you all, talk about air traffic control in general. And the concept, I mean, for those that aren't intimate with air traffic, I suppose most people aren't, you probably have little ideas and snippets from, I don't know, watching Pushing Tin or something. That's not really what air traffic is, but some of you have a better idea how that works. I offer this expression or philosophy that air traffic works because we conquer by dividing. Not that we're trying to conquer pilots, but we conquer our workload by divvying it up. Up in the tower, there's 3 basic positions: flight data clearance delivery, and they function as kind of more the administrators in the tower. They will interface with a pilot before they fly to make sure they've got their weather, they've got their ATIS, they've got their clearance, they've got what they need to begin actively moving on the surface. Then the plane will be ushered or handed off to ground control. Pretty self-explanatory. Ground controller is responsible for ensuring that the aircraft and vehicles and personnel operate on the airport surface safely from point A to point B. And then probably the most interesting and important position actually in the tower is the local control. That's the controller that clears the aircraft to land, clears them to take off. I put below that sequencing the intersection. Pretty important concept for us here at Santa Barbara. We actually are fairly, we have a pretty good capacity because we have 3 runways. And of course, you could say that we have 6 because you can land in one direction on runway 7 or runway 25. But for all intents and purposes, we have 3 pieces of pavement that we can use, which actually allows us to have a higher capacity because we can sequence aircraft to all 3 of those runways, unless, of course, the city's got one of them closed down for some reason, which does happen from time to time, right?
Next week.
Next
For
week.
good reason.
Okay.
For good reason.
What makes that interesting is that, and I mentioned our configuration of a tower and a TRACON. Well, all the TRACON will do is we'll line up airplanes to a particular runway. So they'll have them lined up for 15 right, they'll have them lined up for 15 left, they'll have them lined up for runway 25, and then they give them to the tower. And the local controller's job is to, and Carl's a pilot, he knows what I'm talking about. So the local controller's job is to sequence them, making adjustments so one aircraft is safely through the intersection of the runway before the other aircraft crosses the landing threshold. So it's fun, it's exciting, it's challenging, and sometimes a little scary. But I don't want to mislead or give you the wrong impression. It's not scary. It's not scary bad. It's scary good. It's possible. I do want to mention CIC1 FLM. That's the CIC is a term, controller in charge. One indicates in the tower. FLM is frontline manager. The reason I offer that to you, it's another active position that we have in the tower. Sometimes there's a temptation to make jokes about air traffic control and things like that. But I want everybody, especially the Airport Commission, to have that warm feeling that the system is very safe. It's remarkably safe. People up there are professional. They spend a long time going through training, and most importantly, we have checks and balances. The CIC1 is somebody that stands in the back of the tower that watches everybody, and they go, "See that guy? Hey, what about that? Did you see that?" And also too, and I also want to acknowledge that an integral part of the safety that we provide is the pilots. Karen's a pilot, Carl's a pilot. We have a lot of pilots in the room, and we work together to ensure that nothing bad happens to an aircraft or personnel. The system is remarkably safe, and well, sometimes I might take a poke at it. I will never back away from my strong, unwavering commitment that we do provide safe air traffic for you here in Santa Barbara. Next one, please, Mabel. Okay, I'll go through these a little bit more quickly because the TRACON, as I described before, Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility. We actually have 4 radar positions downstairs. LCAP radar, which is the airspace to the west of the Santa Barbara Airport. Harbor radar is the airspace to the east of the Santa Barbara Airport. Pismo radar, which is up north. I don't think I'll go too far in the weeds, but part of the Santa Barbara history is back in 1994, Vandenberg Approach Control, military approach, went out of the business. And we made a commitment to the flying public up there that as soon as it was practical and feasible, that the FAA would return that airspace to an approach control environment. And we made good on our promise 11 years later, because what we had to do is we had to build the beautiful facility that we enjoy now and that is a part of our community, and also install the equipment that allowed us to work the airspace up there. So we literally worked the airspace from just north of San Luis Obispo, short of Paso Robles, all the way down to about Carpinteria. And those are the positions to the north. The Pismo radar is the northernmost one, and the Orcut radar, which is basically, Pismo is basically San Luis Obispo, Orcut basically Santa Maria and the surrounding airports. I did indicate flight data radar, which again is more of an administrative function down in the TRACON, but yet another set of eyes, another body to help when the traffic builds up. CIC2, much like in the tower, is that oversight position that we use in case the controllers, even today, I walked into the radar room and they were busy, and walked in and said, "Let's get some help." So we got some controllers in, split the positions. And what's interesting is, being stewards of the taxpayers' money, we try to be as efficient as possible. So keeping the right number of controllers, keeping the right positions open. It's kind of a little puzzle, a little challenge that we have. We need to be the right size. We don't need to have people sitting around reading the paper waiting to get called, but then again, we want to have staffing available to open when necessary. This morning, for some reason, I think we're all fogged in. There was a lot of holding, and then started to clear, and we had to call everybody back. So everybody, please report to the TRACON. We've got work for you to do. We did that. Next slide, please, Mabel. Oh, you know what? I guess I did touch on this a little bit, so I'll just kind of go over it again. The facility that we enjoy was opened in 1998. It was a vision of Chick Foley. Many of you probably remember him. He's a good friend and a mentor of mine. And if it wasn't for his vision and his influence, I don't know that we would have such a nice facility. One thing that is important, when the building was built, the intent was to take a lot of radar airspace. In our TRACON, we have 9 positions available. As I mentioned, we're only using 4 sectors right now. And I'll get into something in a minute that will kind of dovetail into what I said. The STARS installed in 2004, fastest installation to date. What is relevant or important about that? The STARS, Standard Terminal Automation Replacement System. It's automation, but it's digital, and it was kind of the future back then. And part of the reason that we were fortunate enough to get it in a medium-sized facility was because we had that commitment to take the Vandenberg airspace. The amazing thing about STARS is it'll take feeds from a number of different sources. As it stands right now, we take a feed from Paso Robles radar, the Santa Maria ASR-11, which means terminal radar, the Vandenberg ASR-4, which is a long-range radar, the Santa Barbara ASR-11, and the San Pedro long-range radar, as well as recently we got the new feed for ADS-B, which will be kind of next-gen type of stuff. We were committed. We got the STARS installed in record time. That was to ensure that we did return the airspace to the north back to approach control environment, which was the commitment that the FAA had made. And as soon as we got the STARS in, we were able to take the Vandenberg approach control. One thing that's interesting to notice, the airspace that we took to the north was twice as big as our legacy airspace, which is just the airspace that surrounds Santa Barbara. So that was significant. Next one, please. I want to tell you where we're at staffing-wise. The news is pretty good. Just having a dialogue with Carl before the meeting started. We've got, our target is to have 26 CPCs. CPC is Certified Professional Controller. Of that number, we've got 25. So we're really close. 8 people in training. Right now, we're a little low on supervisors. That's the FLM. We're authorized 4. We have 2 on board. 1 air traffic manager, myself, Secretary Deborah Hopper, staff specialist Malia Sharkey, who's just fantastic. The last one is Raytheon support. The FAA, government's real keen on contracting a lot of things lately. They've got a program or an idea where they're hiring people to come into air traffic facilities to help with the training. Right now, we don't have everybody in place. But we expect in about, I think I heard 5 weeks, there will be an outside contractor coming in to help us provide training to the new controllers. Next one. Just some GWIS information. The challenges that we have, I'm very comfortable with where our staffing is right now, but it's always dynamic. Many of the people that come to Santa Barbara to learn air traffic control will find out that it's expensive to live here, and we all know that. And what's interesting is that about half the people say, well, I think I'll stick around for a while, enjoy the lovely Santa Barbara area. Sometimes they'll commute from the north or the south, but a lot of them, at least half of them, tend to further their career elsewhere. Busier radar facilities, higher level towers, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Northern California, TRACON, etc. And what's noteworthy about that is most of the controllers that we send down the road to the higher level facilities have a very high success rate, so we do something right. Interestingly, about half of the controllers that come to Santa Barbara are not successful in the training. It's a big step. It's a complicated airport. While we don't have the numbers that some of the other ones do, we've got a lot of things that can trip a newer controller up. Now we're kind of in more of we've been better lately because we're in a mode where they're hiring controllers and putting them into smaller level facilities, VFR towers, like a Camarillo or a Santa Monica or an El Monte, so they can kind of get their some air traffic background before they come to our facility, because there's no value in them not being successful in the training program. Right now, we've got 5 controllers released out, and that's what I was referring to earlier. I think one's going to LAX, another one's going to Austin, Texas, I think, to be with family, and Las Vegas, and various other places. So we recognize and accept our position as kind of a trainer or a feeder facility. Next one. ADS-B Fusion, I think I touched on that a little bit. There's not really much more to say. I do want to comment on the Point Mugu airspace assumption. That's a big one for us. Same scenario as we experienced back with Vandenberg. They've done a business case. Point Mugu is the approach control to the south, the military approach control, and they basically service Camarillo, Oxnard, and Point Mugu, and probably Santa Paula as well, even though they don't have approaches in there. Well, the decision or determination has indeed been made for Point Mugu airspace to come to Santa Barbara. Fantastic news for us, other than it's going to be a lot of work. And my boss was in today, and we were starting to discuss what type of plans need to be made. While they don't have a date carved in stone, I think that the concept is indeed carved in stone. So the idea is that we are going to build I think you called it a Gantt chart or something. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, like project management, things like that. I'm not versed in it, apologize for that. But what we're going to do is, X will be our target date, and 3 months before X we'll be training controllers, and 5 months before X we'll make sure that we have the radar feeds, and 6 months, et cetera. So it is now very, very concrete or determined that Point Mugu Airspace will be coming to Santa Barbara, which is really good news for us. The Metroplex Airspace redesign. Interesting. We are at the table with Southern California TRACON they're doing kind of a white sheet approach to the airspace in all of Southern California. Of course, now with the ability to design routings, like I have RNAV arrivals. We used to be dependent on ground-based navigational aids, VORs and ILSs, and it was interesting too because we were kind of our own worst enemies. We had airways and jetways where we'd have airplanes, we'd put them all on the same street and then have to kind of separate them. Well, now with RNAV, it's basically satellite navigation. We can create routes that are more efficient, that keep airplanes away from each other. So we are involved with Southern California TRACON. We go to the meetings to design, arrival routes or routes that will be friendly to the communities and be more efficient for the aircraft. Next, please. Future of the FAA. I just wanted to touch on this as I start to come toward the end of the presentation. Next gen. Has everybody heard that term, next gen? Yeah. Does everybody know what it means? No, me neither. It's like an umbrella term that they use that basically is synonymous with the future it's the next generation of air traffic. What is fascinating about that to me is that it's everything. It's rethinking air traffic control from the ground up, from virtual towers to the type of controllers that we're going to be having, to the equipment that we're going to be using. It's remarkable the changes that we're going through right now. I believe that part of it is maybe attached to, it's kind of a natural break. Back in 1981, there was a controller strike, and they hired a bunch of controllers and kind of rebuilt the system from the ground up. Well, that was over 30 years ago, and most of those controllers are off to something else. So we're kind of designing a new system. Well, now I think they see a window of opportunity to determine what do they want the future of the airspace system to look like. And a lot of it has to do with what kind of equipment are we going to use. Well, we are going to move to ADS-B. And what they're going to do is they're going to decommission some of the ground-based navigational aids. They don't need a whole system of radars or VORs, which is a navigational system. So they're going to systematically kind of shut some of those down or let them when they come to the end of their useful life. But it'll be strategically designed so we maintain a skeleton infrastructure in the event that we need ground-based navigation. But they're going to start to move away from that and incorporate the GPS. Everything's changing. That's why I use the term right-sizing the NAS. NAS meaning National Airspace System. So they're doing a kind of a ground-up look at what the future of air traffic is going to look like. As I mentioned, virtual towers is on the table to where it may be in the future, I don't know how far off it'll be, there'll be a large room where controllers are sitting in a room in Kansas City and they're working ground control at Phoenix, Arizona. You don't think that could happen? It can. They're doing it right now. They're doing it in other countries, actually. And those are the types of things that they're looking at for us. And to be honest, I mean, I don't know what exactly is on the drawing board or what's out of reach, but a lot of discussion about what they expect the future to look like. I mentioned new controllers. It looks like there's going to be about 3,000 of them in the next 2 years. That's a significant number because there's only about 15,000 air traffic controllers total. So that's, I don't know, what's the percentage of that? It's about 20%, I think, something like that. Yeah. And one thing and this was real telling to me that I want to share with you. They opened up a bid for air traffic controllers. There was 28,000 applicants, and of those 28,000, less than 3,000 of them were deemed qualified. I tried to figure that out. I didn't know I didn't understand the rationale why that was. As I poured through the documents, very psychology-driven, and I think I'm going to go back to it after I get my PhD, because then maybe I'll understand it, that it was way out there. And what's interesting, what caught my attention is they're not looking for the same kind of people. They're not looking for the controllers like I was, or some of the other ones, the kind of come in and take over, and you do this and you do that. And I think that in concert with the future of the FAA, they're looking for different people. They're looking for people that can, to oversee a system, that can monitor a system, that can work with computer-assisted decision-making tools in order to allow, the system to go. So I can't really expand on that in depth, other than to say there's big changes coming in the FAA, and it's going to the next 10 or 15 years is going to be fascinating. Next one. That's all that I have. I wasn't exactly sure what it was you wanted to hear, so I tried to cover a variety of things. I'd like to open it up for questions. If you have any questions of me, or if something comes up further down the road, it's easy to contact me. My email address is really basic, real easy to remember, and of course that's just the phone number over to the tower. So any questions you'd like me to field tonight for you?
Well, I think many of us all kind of fear the idea of the TRACON here going away and being consolidated with LA or Oakland. Maybe you could speak to that. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball, but I'm also wondering, does having a training facility here, or this being a training facility, help kind of protect our having the facility so that trainees have exposure both in the tower environment and in the...
Excellent question, Bruce, and it's very insightful. Yeah, we don't want the radar to go away. As a matter of fact, my friend Ken from Bakersfield was just over today, and about a month ago they found out that their tower is leaning 6 inches. Right? The leaning tower of Bakersfield. Well, what they've done is they parked a temporary tower there, and the engineers are determining whether that building is safe to occupy. As I mentioned, there's only 3 up-downs in the area. If indeed they decide to, abandon that building, the airspace will go to Los Angeles Center. That's who has to take it. May even eventually end up in Santa Barbara. We are, that little note that said right-sizing the nest, when I see that I go, oh, there goes Santa Barbara radar. But one of the things that we have going is, if you look, our building is relatively new. And I think that the people that recognize that, it would be silly to abandon a resource or an infrastructure like that. What I believe will happen is we will end up catching some of the airspace, the Point Mugu airspace, the Bakersfield airspace. That facility is not in danger of closing for a very long time. In the long term, I suspect that on a drawing board somewhere, it shows our radar airspace being worked somewhere else. If I were going to guess, 25 years, something like that. And by then it'll be robots anyway. So, no, but it's a good question, and you're right. And the other thing I wanted to comment on, Bruce, is that I think that more and more people are realizing the need for an intermediate radar facility. What I mean when I say that is, there's a lot of people that would go to a Southern California TRACON or Chicago O'Hare or Northern California TRACON, and that's a quantum leap. That's too big of a step. We need a facility like this one so controllers can come, learn how to do radar without throwing themselves into a pond that's a little too deep. So for those 2 reasons, I feel very confident that this facility is not in jeopardy of closure anytime soon.
That's great news. It's always wonderful to hear your all voices when we come back into the area.
Yeah, and that's part of it. I mean, I look around and I know that we have such a nice aviation community. I mean, I love working with the people at the airport and the pilots, and we've all been around for a while. And I guess we like to resist change, but I don't think we're going to see significant change over there for a while.
Todd,
Yes,
great,
sir.
Craig Arcuri, great presentation.
Thank you, Craig.
Appreciate that, and great, fantastic job you folks do up there. A number of questions. So ADS-B is completely up and running now in this facility?
Yes, sir. And by 2020, all aircraft will be required to have that equipment. It's interesting, too, because I heard that they're kind of attaching it to the cell phone towers. And it is, at one point, if I could expand on that a little bit more, I think they wanted to put all of their eggs into the ADS-B or the satellite navigation basket. And they thought, well, that doesn't make sense. Because if there were a way to disable the satellites, then we'd be dead in the water, so to speak. So they're taking a hybrid approach where they do intend to leave some ground-based radar navigational systems to supplement or augment the ADS-B. As a matter of fact, we can flip a switch and see which aircraft have ADS-B, probably 1 in 20, 25 maybe, today, but that number will continue to increase.
Thank you. And then in terms of the up-down, a TRACON and a tower, you said there's 3 in the Southern California region. Do you have an idea how many there are in the U.S.?
Oh, boy.
Or would you hazard a guess on that?
You know what? I think my guess would be just such a shot in the dark. I would
Okay.
say 30, but I think that they used to be popular back east. And what's interesting, too, is sometimes the kiss of death, so to speak, was because I know that they took the radar out of Reno. Reno has a brand new tower. They took the radar out of Palm Springs. Palm Springs has a brand new tower. Bakersfield, and that's what, even Bakersfield and Fresno, they're a little dilapidated, but they're kind of like, should we ask for a new tower? Well, no, because it's like, yeah, we'd be happy to build you a new tower. And where would you like your radar to go? Which, and again, that dovetails into what Bruce said, which is, here, our building is not in jeopardy because we have a new building and we have a nice big radar room. And as a matter of fact, that right sizing the NAS, I saw that and I go, that might play right into our hands in terms of we still have, presently today, we've got 5 scopes that we're not using. So Bakersfield, Fresno, Point Mugu. Everybody's welcome.
That's the original plan.
Thank you. You mentioned you're staffed at 25 out of 26, and then also said that 8, I forget what the terminology was, 8 in training.
Yeah,
So is the 8 in training part of the 25, or is that in addition to the
in
20?
addition to.
So you have 25 certified controllers, and then in addition to that, 8 in training?
Yeah. And what's interesting about that, Craig, important to note that, my calculations tell me that if I wanted a new CPC in the building tomorrow, they're about 3 years away. I mean, when I said that, I just had this discussion today, especially with the impending Point Mugu airspace, which means our number will probably go up to about, I'm lobbying for 34 CPCs, which I think is reasonable. But the reason that data is so far out there is that if I ask for a controller tomorrow, they go, okay, let's put out the bid. Okay, that'll take a month to get the bid out. And then, I think that's my phone. I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. I won't answer this.
Unless they need you.
Yeah, it's not the tower calling for help.
Okay.
So what happened is if I made the request for personnel tomorrow, they'd put out the bid, take about a month to get the bid out, a couple of months, to get the bid processed, call up a facility, say, when can you release this controller? Well, probably take us about 8 months. So that controller would arrive in our building about a year down the road, and to get through a tower TRACON, it takes about 2 years. So it's an interesting game that I'm obligated to play to try to project out. And one of the things they look for is they say, what losses do you have on paper that you can show me? It's like, okay, well, this guy's going to retire May of next year. This one's transferring out in a year, et cetera. So I'm constantly looking way out in the future. And some of it's kind of like, I can't tell you what losses I'm going to have in a year and a half, but I know I'm going to have some. You know what I mean? It could be anything. It could be senior controller going down with a medical. Something happens, they need to take heart medicine or something, and the flight surgeon says they can't work traffic anymore. So it's a challenging game to play. So right now, I'm in the process of asking for more controllers, but the reality is that whatever they approve, I might see the controller in a year, and hopefully it'll be certified in 2.5.
And then along that same vein, you had a number of 5 released controllers. What is that? How does that relate to the 25, and what does that mean?
Those, well, you know what that does, and it still puts us ahead of the game. We've got those 8 in training, right? Well, those 8 in training are supposed to be replacements for the 5 we have released. Like we've got one tomorrow will be our last day. She's going to Austin, Texas. In June, fella's going to Las Vegas. Then in September, a guy's going to San Francisco Tower. In December, another one's going to LAX. So the idea is that we try to keep filling the pipeline in behind, and it's a challenging game to play because sometimes it's speculation, and they're kind of fussy about. And another thing that they don't want to see happen is they don't want to see us filling for vacancies that I can't prove that I have yet, if that makes sense.
So I understood. So the 5 are of the 25, 5 of those are committed to be going someplace at some point here.
And by then, we expect those 8 to be certified. So, hopefully it means that we're up by 3. But I still need to keep people in the system.
Understood. And then just three more, and I was writing, you just brought up so many good points. I recall that the tower was operating at level orange in terms of visitors. Is that still terminology that's being used?
No, we don't use that.
Okay. And I remember there being some talk with Chick way back when about taking higher airspace, where you go over to Oakland, at San Luis above 8,000, or LA Center above 8,000. Is that kind of in the, you see that in your crystal ball, taking higher than 8,000 and farther north?
Yeah, but first things first.
Right.
And we've talked about. I mean, right now the I guess the issue that's looming large is that Point Mugu. I mean, that train has left the station. They did a business case. It was signed off by the service center, which is kind of the next level beyond my district. They're up in Washington State. It's in Washington, D.C., waiting for the ink, waiting for the appropriate signature. At Point Mugu, they're briefing their controllers. Looks like you guys might be going somewhere else. So that's going to be our first project. And we eventually, honestly, too, Craig, what will happen, I think, is once, because our footprint's going to be so huge, we're going to butt up to Southern California TRACON to the south, to Oakland Center to the north, but we'll go up to 8,000 feet. It's only logical that our airspace would get taller, but it's like we can't even talk about that yet,
Right.
because we got quite a big fish to fry.
Okay, great. And then one last one. So I've missed talking to Trish and Lisa in the tower, and understand they're both out on maternity leave, and that's quite a coincidence to have two controllers out on maternity leave. Is there something going on in the tower that we should know about?
Well, all I
is going
can
to
say
affect
is
your
that,
future staffing?
All I can say is that the union rep, he told me he went to a meeting in I think it was Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and he likes to introduce himself as the captain of the Love Boat.
Okay,
But
thanks.
it's funny too, because I told you I just talked to my friend from Bakersfield. They had 6, since the beginning of the year. And honestly, I think it's the changing of the guard that we're experiencing with the senior controllers moving out, and younger controllers. Well, I'm not sure how to say this other than just blurting it out. Some of the younger controllers are in that time of life where they're having families.
Right.
So whether it's not all the, Lisa and Trish will be back within a week or two. Yes. Goodness. And both Lisa and Trish are married to controllers at the tower. Well, why is that germane? It's like because this is the federal government, and so when Lisa and Trish go out for their baby, it's like the husbands go, "Oh, we want to stick around for a while." Of course, fortunately, after a couple of weeks, they get bored and they want to come back to work. It was tough at the beginning of the year, and
Yeah.
Bakersfield was even worse.
Well, thanks very much, Todd. And again, you guys do an awesome job.
Thank you for that, Craig. Appreciate it. Anybody else?
I was curious, so with the Magoo rearrangement, are any of those controllers moving up to positions here?
Another good question. You got good questions tonight. Originally, that was not a part of the mix, and now it is. Interesting, because the discussion or the dialogue about moving the airspace, there's a lot of politics attached to it. And the military, on one hand, the reason that they want to jettison the airspace is because, depending on who you talk to, about 90% of the traffic that they work is civilian. Well, all of the money pots start in Washington, D.C., so the military gets their pot of money, and they're going, we can't afford to spend money working civilian flights. Let's make the FAA do that. However, the human side of that says they've got some controllers. I think they have DOD controllers. Well, nobody wants to see anybody kicked out on the street. So now I know that there's dialogue to perhaps bring some of those controllers on, because it's a fantastic solution for everybody involved. It's like now these people will have the opportunity to maintain an air traffic control job. They bring with them the experience of working Point Mugu, so they can come up and they can work it tomorrow, and they can teach the rest of us how to do it. So at first it seemed as though there was some sort of barrier, because I don't think we do it. But then everybody recognized that it was really the best solution. So now I think they're going to say, well, we'll find a way to do this. So I do think that we'll get some of the Point Mugu controllers to come work at Santa Barbara.
Great.
Yes, Karen?
Is there, oh, go ahead.
What's the mandatory retirement age for controllers?
56.
Is there any chance of getting the ATIS so that you can hear it on the other side of the hills?
Yeah, there's 2 chances. No. That comes up as one of the things that we run into is I think it conflicts with something up in the Bay Area, and I've heard different, potential solutions. Talking about putting a repeater up on the hill, but there's something way out there that one of the things I heard as a possible solution is controller will give you the numbers if you ask them for it. We hear this question a lot, Carl, and I don't know. Maybe things have changed. Maybe the landscape's changed a little bit, and there is a solution to it. And but and I want to bring up something. It's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but it's interesting. Right now, I'm in this serious negotiation with somebody. I don't even know why I am, to be honest with you. They want to build a wind farm about 2.5 miles west of Santa Maria Airport. Well, these turbines are about 500 feet tall, and they're less than 2.5 miles away from the Santa Barbara ASR-11, and they're big pieces of metal that move and spin. And I'm like, I talked to the tech ops guy, and I said, well, is this going to have an impact on the radio? They're like, oh yeah, oh hell yeah, it will. and for me, that's enough. It's like, I'm going to say that we're not in favor of this, but boy, the hoops that I've had to jump through so far, and this isn't over yet. I mean, I'm talking to some lady in Kansas City about why we don't think it's a good idea to have windmills like almost within the airport traffic. I mean, literally, it's like within the pattern area. And more importantly than that, really, is the potential that it could disrupt or somehow interfere with the signal from the radar. It's like, to me, that's a deal breaker there. It's like, sorry, I'm all in favor of sustainable energy and reducing our dependence on foreign oil. However, put it in somebody else's backyard because I think it's a bad idea.
Did they look at what's happened in Palm Springs?
No, is it
Lots of clutter.
really?
They programmed big sections of it out and have had issues with it for years, and that's why they upgraded the radar 14 years ago. But I think they continue to have issues.
Thank you for that, Tracy. That's perfect because I think I got to get on the phone, and that's actually why I felt kind of like a fish out of water because I felt like I was lobbying or arguing, and I'm like, I'm not sure that this is in my wheelhouse here. I'm kind of out of my element here. Shouldn't you be talking to I don't know, the radar techs or something like that? But I really do appreciate that because, and I honestly believe that it's a matter of this person is just looking for somebody to talk to say, I need to find out what to tell. The project, and it was interesting in the email she sent, she says, well, we just need to make sure that we have adequate justification so we can disapprove this $48 million project. I'm like, oh, okay, so they're pretty serious about, what this means. And it's not just a matter of, I don't think it should go there. It's really a matter of our organization, the FAA, saying, you know what, we have significant reasons as to why this is a bad idea. And, I'm sitting here thinking, well, in my humble opinion, which isn't worth $48 million, I don't think.
I was curious about the answer to Karen's question. Why controllers are mandatory at 56, yet commercial pilots are now up to 65? That seems like, if anything, it might be the other way around.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and of course we're all cognizant that the switch doesn't flip at 56. But I'll tell you what, more of the controllers that I know that are approaching that age or getting near it, going, it's not a bad idea. Why is that? Just let me put it to you this way: can you help me find my glasses and my car keys? and it's like, I mean, exactly.
There's an airplane out there someplace. I think so.
But I think there's even a more interesting reason, or another reason. As a controller, controllers have what's called early retirement, which means as a controller you can retire after 25 years of service at any age, or 20 years of service if you reached age 50. Well, the concept is the job is stressful. It takes a lot out of you. And now, and funny because I see some of the controllers aren't quite ready to retire. And usually it's based upon, the second kid in college or, getting the mortgage paid or whatever it is. That's why they're not ready to retire. But the idea is you kind of can't have it both ways. If we're lobbying, if we're telling Congress that, this job is so stressful that people really shouldn't have to work a long time, but why don't you let us work as long as we want to? It's like, no, which is it? So yeah, we are still mandatory age 56. They're not granting any waivers, and I can tell you that the way the FAA has been structured, senior controllers are compensated at the higher levels of pay. So When they say, hey, is there any way I can get extension and stay for an extra year? Extremely rare that that's going to be granted, because the reality is we got a lot of really bright young kids that really want to be air traffic controllers, and they do it for considerably less than the senior controllers do. So there's not a lot of people that are sympathetic to the age 56 heave-ho. Yes, Karen.
One last question. I know that student pilots are encouraged by their instructors when they're first out by themselves to announce the word student and pilot in their transmissions. And a number of times I've felt that some of the controllers who are not full-fledged might do themselves a good turn by affixing something that might be Santa Barbara Tower T, or something to indicate to us that we should have a little more patience with them because they are trainees, and that a lot of the service we expect normally you may not see as quickly, or you need to have a little more patience with them because of their trainee status.
Yeah, interesting suggestion. I'll run that by we've got a local safety council. It's kind of a new program the FAA has. Management, the union working together to look at different ideas. We've actually run a lot of things through there recently, and I will bring that up, Karen. Thank you for offering it.
I'd just like to say I'm not a pilot, but your presentation was fascinating, and certainly it is a complex set of things that you have to work with, and I appreciate all that you provided
Well, thank you,
today.
Patricia. I hope it gives you a better understanding of what we do. Anything else?
Any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very
Thanks,
interesting.
Todd.
And item 9, I believe we're at item 9. Yes, the market rate rental adjustment for La Patera investors.
Ms. Rebecca Fripley, the property manager, will make the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. On January 8, 1998, the city entered into a 5-year lease agreement with La Patera LLC with 4 5-year options. Recently, La Patera has notified us that they wish to exercise the third of those 5-year options, and that requires a rental adjustment to market rate. In looking at the comps, the rental adjustments mandated by the lease have outstripped the CPI increases. So at this time, we're recommending that the Airport Commission approve and authorize the acting airport director to execute a market rate rental adjustment with La Patera Investors LP, a California limited partnership, reducing the rent from 21 cents to 18 cents per square foot, which is compatible with other similar properties on the airport.
Just a question, Rebecca.
Sure.
That's the property that's over here with the commercial building. Is that on the other side of?
It's adjacent to the Goleta Lemon Packing Plant, the former Goleta Lemon Packing Plant, which is owned by La Patera, and they needed additional parking space, so they leased what was originally a dirt lot from us.
So we're making money from dirt.
Yes, we are.
Terrific.
Question?
We're looking for approval. I would recommend approval of the adjustment.
I'll second that.
All in favor of approving the market rate rental adjustment for La Patera?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank
Approved.
you.
Thank you.
And the second item that I have for you tonight, item number 10, is a lease agreement with Goleta Building Materials that we wanted to bring to your attention because Goleta Building Materials has been a tenant with us since 1963. For those of you that aren't aware of them, they're on Botello Road and Lopez, and they operate a rock, sand, and gravel yard, and they've also recently gotten into the business of landscaping and hardscaping materials, including patio pavers and outdoor kitchens and the things that you need to make outdoor living spaces. At this time, we're proposing a new lease with an initial term of 10 years and 1 5-year option. The proposed monthly rental rate is 15.5 cents per square foot for the land and $1.09 per square foot for the building space, for a total monthly rental of $10,378. This represents a 3% increase over the prior rental. The lease will provide for annual CPI increases of no less than 3% and no greater than 8%. In addition, there will be a market rate appraisal at the beginning of each 5-year term. And the rents, the rents are compatible to other land and buildings on the airport for similar use and in similar condition. So tonight I'm asking that you approve and authorize the acting airport director to execute a 10-year lease agreement with 1 5-year option with Goleta Building Materials, Inc., a California corporation, for 3,200 square feet of Building 224 at 6100 Francis Botello Road, 31,882 square feet of land at 91 Frederick Lopez Road, and 14,690 square feet of land at 90 Frederick Lopez Road at the Santa Barbara Airport, effective May 1st, 2014, for a monthly rental of $10,698 exclusive of utilities.
I'll move that we approve that lease.
Second.
All in favor of approving the lease agreement with Goleta Building Materials?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11, Wi-Fi network access at the airline terminal.
Yes, you'll recall that with even the historic terminal, before we built the new terminal, we provided complimentary Wi-Fi in the facility, and we have done that in the new building as well. There had been reports of some issues with Wi-Fi dropping off or having to walk in different spaces within the terminal to even get connected. So I've asked Tracy to give you an update on the efforts that we've taken and the status of the Wi-Fi in the terminal. Tracy?
Thank you very much. We got reports just end of February of signal dropping and people not being able to log on. We contacted IS. We began kind of monitoring it with our folks that monitor the exit lane. We had them signing on and off on occasion to get an idea of how shady the performance was. And IS got a consultant out to do a complete analysis of the system. What we found, they did a, what do they call it? A bandwidth analysis, where they go through the building with a signal receiver and looks like a topographical map. So they found some dead spots. They fixed that. They adjusted so that additional number of users can go on at once. They've also adjusted the, I want to get the terminology correct. It's called FairNet. It is an internal feature to the software that powers the Wi-Fi system that prevents a single user from dominating the bandwidth. What they believe is happening or was happening, and most of the time this happens and people don't realize it. I mean, chances are there's a few of you sitting right now that have a broadband application going on your phone and you've minimized it and silenced it, but it's still eating up bandwidth and it's still there, and that is what was happening, they believe, a lot. So this kicks off people after they've been on for kind of an inordinate amount of time. Hence, it's called FairNet. So those improvements, the increased number of users, a fine-tuning of bandwidth, implementation of FairNet, and then they also adjusted to get a couple of the dead spots leveled out a little in better reception. All of the improvements were implemented about 10 days ago, and so far the performance has been much improved. We're still monitoring it, but it has been quite an improvement, and the people tell you when your Wi-Fi is not working. It has become an absolute, critical customer service element. You hear about it fast when it's not working. So we're really pleased because we want to offer as many amenities as possible, and this is one people really like. So it's working much better. We're very thankful to the Information Services Department. They hopped right on it. They got out here at night and did changes. So it has been a significant improvement.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yes, as you say, it's become almost critical for some people's businesses even. So it's not just watching cat videos.
I want my Wi-Fi.
Oh, thanks. Okay, the director's report, item 12.
Thank you. Just to call your attention to the passenger count, which I'm really excited about because for the month of March, we had 8.1% increase, which is really amazing and wonderful. And year-to-date, we're at 3.7. Also, if you'll notice on the back of your report, as Todd indicated earlier, there had been some indication of new activity in operations, and actually it's 24% this March over March of last year. That's significant, and perhaps it is pilots being trained. You know, that would be great to know, but that is a big increase for operations for the airport. Just a couple of other items. The Air Service consultant that made a presentation to Airport Commission also did the same presentation to City Council yesterday. So we're sharing the package of information with them as well. We have the contract for the master plan environmental that will be going to City Council in the next couple of weeks. That would be a new amount of $250,000 for the EIR, the Environmental Impact Report. And then also we have had a preliminary report on the ARF study, the feasibility study. We have another meeting later this month, and I anticipate being able to bring something to Airport Commission next month on the ARF study. Other than that, I don't have any other items to bring to your attention unless you have questions.
I'm sure no meeting would be complete without somebody asking about the 2 lease properties that are underway.
That's right. We do have 2 properties available for lease, at least 2. We have had 2 proposals received for the 6010 Hollister property. We're evaluating those, and we'll get back with the commercial broker Radius Group. As yet, we have not had any nibbles on the restaurant facility, but we'll keep you posted.
Is there any further update on the loss of American Eagle?
Not any specific other than in the terminal, they have combined their operation. So now American Eagle and U.S. Airways have 1 counter and 1 new backboard. The backboard was put in last night. We are working very closely with American on hopefully, if nothing else, updating or getting larger aircraft to go to Phoenix and with more seats because there are more domestic connections through Phoenix than through LA, but nothing other than that so far. But thank you.
Thank you.
And the long-term or overflow lot closure, has there been any feedback on that?
We have had a couple of emails about the closure saying, when's it going to be opened again? And one in particular said, well, why did you do that? And once we responded back, giving the information about the loss of the 4 flights and the real impact on the number of passengers that we anticipate not having, and the need to consolidate parking. We responded, and people understand once they have the facts presented. So, but otherwise, it went fairly smoothly, and the parking management company did everything they needed to do to make that a smooth transition.
Okay, good to hear.
Hazel, the March increase in passenger count, in terms of what I think the column to the right shows that same number from the prior year.
Yes.
So is there when does American officially stop the?
April 1st.
Got it. So this
is through March.
Got it.
Right. So April should be a big difference.
Any idea of this bump was unexpected? Any idea why?
my only thought would be spring ski season. And I know from just listening to friends and acquaintances, a lot of people went skiing. So other than that, I don't know. Oh, yes. Tracy wanted me to point out to you that TSA has expanded their pre-check. They have it at the very beginning of departures at 5:30. Tracy, what time are those?
Pre-checks available from about, they start processing people about around 4:30 in the morning. So it's available from 4:30 through 6:30, and now they've expanded it. They're doing it, I believe it is from 8:30 to 10 for another bank of departures. We have approximately 30 to 35% of all the passengers being screened right now departing out of Santa Barbara are pre-check eligible, meaning they get an expedited screening. They're able to keep the shoes on, keep the belt on, keep the laptops, in the case. So it's a big benefit. We get news bulletins all the time about TSA adding pre-check to airports all over the country. Ours has been here for a few months, but it's been expanded a little bit. We've worked with TSA to make it work for them, and they're very pleased, and so are we, because fewer people, taking shoes off is a good thing.
And belts.
And then also, any news on our baggage return, late night baggage return?
Actually, I haven't had complaints recently about that, and I do know that United has completed the cabling necessary to actually occupy one of the counters and storage areas in the bag claim area. They had not done that initially when we opened the terminal, but now they see the necessity of doing that. And so United has made that improvement in their space. And I understand that Alaska has also indicated a real strong interest in doing it as well. So, but Tracy, have you had complaints?
We've not received a complaint about too much time to get luggage to baggage claim. And I know that the manager at American Eagle's been working very hard, and they've got some supervision on at night, and it's coming around. I don't think it's perfect yet, but it's much, much better.
Well, we certainly appreciate your keeping an eye on that.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Questions? All right. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.